first of all, thank you again, you guys, for joining me up here. Thank you to everybody who's tuning in, whether it's live or to the recording. Definitely glad to be here on this side of the Twitter Spaces. Um, Recently, Sei upgraded to Sei V2. Bancor deployed there. I want to hear, from all three of you, really, for anybody who's unfamiliar with Sei, with Bancor and Carbon DeFi, with what is going on within the ecosystem right now. Grover, maybe you wouldn't mind starting us off, maybe just doing an intro for us, and then we can kind of pass it over to Mark and Glenn.
Sure. Hi everyone. Nice to meet you. So I'm Grover. I'm head of marketing at Sei. Been with the team for a long old time. Been in crypto since 2017, but we won't go through the whole story. I was really, really interested in 2020 by these things called smart contracts and smart contract blockchains, and I thought this could be a really nice place for very interesting things to get built. So yeah, that's that's the very beginning of all of that. I've been with this team since pretty much the beginning, and yeah, just excited to kick this one off and talk a bit more about Sei V2 and DeFi on Sei, and then how Bancor and Carbon DeFi kind of fit into the picture.
Perfect. Exactly what we have in mind. Thank you. Mark, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself for everybody?
Certainly. My name is Mark Richardson. In a former life, I was an organic synthetic chemist. I joined DeFi and blockchains in 2020 during the pandemic. I think that trajectory describes, I think, a lot of people in the industry now. First as a DAO member for a couple of different projects, and I picked up my first research contract with Bancor in January of 2021. After that, I was the head of research, and then the product architect, and now the project leader as of October 2022. And the first thing the project did, I think, under my leadership was to transition away from AMMs and start building a more robust and sophisticated exchange architecture. And the realization of that is the new product from Bancor, which is called Carbon DeFi, which we are very excited to have launched. I think we were the first DeFi project to launch on Sei after their mainnet went live. And it's been just thrilling to see how fast it performs. I think that it was always built with a faster finality in mind. And to have a blockchain like Sei with a 0.4 second block speed is just phenomenal. So yeah, it's a very exciting time.
Thank you so much, Mark. We'll get more into the robust and sophisticated architecture and, seeing it performing on Sei V2 and what it's bringing in just a little bit. Glenn, would you mind introducing yourself as well?
Yeah, similar to Mark, I started as a contributor to the Bancor DAO back in 2020 on the governance side. Eventually became full-time contributor back in early 2022. On the BizDev side, my background is in computer science. I was working for a hedge fund out of NYC for about 6 years. And then I made the switch over to blockchain DeFi Web3. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, and happy to be here. Thanks for having us in this call, and great to chat to other people from the Sei community.
Definitely. Thank you for joining, and always great to chat with the Sei community. I do have to say, Grover, we'll talk about Sei, and I want you to, but the community has been nothing but amazing. Like, it seriously, they are so loud and they're so passionate and they're just so enthusiastic about everything that's going on. Um, it's been a really wonderful community to join, So I have to give a shout out to them since Glenn kind of brought up the community aspect here. But
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people that care a lot about Sei, which is amazing because, I mean, yeah, when we launched like August last year, there were people that cared, but maybe for some of the wrong reasons. But now I think, through December and January, that's when it sort of went really, really crazy, and people started to just like, come and start trading around NFTs and meme coins, things like that. And yeah, there's just a lot of people who really care about the chain and the project. And yeah, it's amazing because that's pretty much the only thing you could ever hope for. Like when you get involved with a project, is that people will actually care about this, and they'll discuss it and debate it and create their own discords, and they'll go and have their opinions. And and share them very openly. And I think that's really cool. So yeah, agree. They're cool.
They're wonderful and they have such a presence. It's really great. Okay, well, let's talk about why, right? You said that, maybe last year they kind of joined for the wrong reasons, but they're here. And I mean, there's a reason for it, right? So tell us about Say V2. Tell us what's going on, what it is that you guys are building. Um, you just went live. So for anybody who's
Mm,
unfamiliar, give us a rundown. Not even
sure.
a rundown. I mean, just give it to us, right?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess where to start. So Say is a very fast blockchain which supports two execution environments. So it now supports, as of like what was it, 2 weeks ago, it supports the Ethereum virtual machine as well. We kind of have this take, which I think a few people here kind of share, which is that the EVM is definitely here to stay. And it has a ton of mindshare, a ton of developer power. A lot of people are very interested and have developed a lot of work, done a lot of work on top of the EVM. So back in last year with CosmWasm, yes, it's a pretty efficient and pretty useful sort of platform to build apps on top of, but there's just nowhere near the kind of, like, I think 9 out of 10 developers in crypto have worked on at least one EVM blockchain. And so it's like, you know what, man, like we need to take this infrastructure, we need to sort of bring it to the masses. Like, how are we going to get more developers here? How are we going to get more people to come and really, like, take advantage of Say's finality and all of the good stuff that we built out in the first place? So yeah, that's when like parallel EVM comes into the picture. So yeah, that shipped 2 weeks ago, and yeah, it's I think the way I frame it these days is people kind of get confused. They go, "Hey, are you like trying to compete with Ethereum or something like that?" Which is definitely not the case. The way I'd frame this is a little bit like Say is a GPU. It's like Ethereum's a CPU. So if you want a dedicated graphics card, you want to run Crisis, you need to go to use Say. If you want to do, I don't know, Notepad, or like some other very robust and reliable thing, Ethereum is for that. So it kind of unlocks a new world of opportunities to build different things that you couldn't previously do. So, it's the same with layer twos, maybe 50 to 60 TPS over there. You're going to be able to 100x that on Say, and you're going to be able to do things that are much more interesting on chain that you wouldn't be able to do elsewhere. So that's kind of the way I explain this these days.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. It's kind of funny when a new chain comes around that's like it's not going to be the Ethereum killer. Remember in the beginning, everyone's like, this is the Ethereum killer. And it's kind of like EVM is here to stay, Ethereum's here to stay. But that doesn't mean that there aren't other chains that won't have so much more to offer, in addition to what Ethereum already does. The 100 times more interesting is this kind of mark where, well, I won't say, more interesting than others. What I will say is it allows for different products, different projects to offer things that they wouldn't be able to or benefit from what Say V2 is offering in terms of that finality. Maybe you can speak to Carbon DeFi a little bit and how it kind of came about to be on Say V2.
Certainly. So, like I said in the introduction, I think when we fleshed out Carbon DeFi in the beginning, we knew that it was, not a replacement for AMMs, but a completely sort of tangential view of what decentralized exchange might look like and how it might behave. And it was really built thinking about who the big liquidity providers are likely to be in the future. And I don't necessarily take that radical view that exchange architecture on a blockchain needs to necessarily be at ends with how liquidity operates in like centralized environments. Obviously, I do prefer the decentralized viewpoint. I'm very decentralized leaning, but the point is that AMMs don't really have the ability to operate within the confines of what traditionalist, financial actors would like to do. So, for example, arbitrary price quoting and the ability to actually create true limit orders and like actual functioning marketplaces. And while Bancor, is kind of, I don't want to say to blame, but because we were the first to introduce the AMM concept. I think it's worth like reflecting on why that design principle made sense in 2017 and why it sort of feels very outdated in 2024. At the beginning, the idea was that token issuers would be the only liquidity providers to an AMM. And this was at least partially a realization of the fact that it doesn't really make a lot of financial sense to provide liquidity to an AMM. As the industry has been, slowly learning over the past, few years, especially, that short gamma strategy that an AMM represents is not necessarily a financially performant vehicle. And so if you want private liquidity providers or people that are self-motivated or selfishly motivated, then you need to give them a slightly more sophisticated tool set. And they will still quite happily make markets, but it will be, on their own terms. And so Carbon DeFi was really built with that purpose in mind, right? The selfish liquidity provider who is looking to execute a trading strategy with a specific view of how the market is going to develop. Now, on something like Ethereum, that still works just fine. And, the Carbon DeFi deployment has been running along on Ethereum for the last couple of years without any issues. But the finality of the Ethereum blockchain is still fairly slow. And a lot of these sophisticated financial players would much prefer to adjust their pricing very quickly. And this is where a fast blockchain like Sei is so important. And it's important to realize as well that Carbon was built with that, eventuality in mind. And so I think, at least from my perspective, Sei being, a parallelizable EVM with such a fast finality made it the obvious choice for the first deployment that Bancor has ever had outside of Ethereum since EOS. So it's a very big step for us, and that should be a pretty good indication of our conviction in Sei and its future.
Glenn, I don't know if you want to add anything to what Mark was just saying. Thank you, Mark. When the proposal went up for the Bancor DAO to approve the deployment on Sei V2, you had quite a lot to say about Sei. Is there anything that you want to add to what Mark was just saying? Because I know that, I personally know that you are a huge supporter of this.
Yeah, it was. I'm a huge supporter of it. Essentially, I think the perspective that the perspective that I'm looking at it from, I think we share some of the same ideals, right? When I say that, I mean one of the co-founders from Sei, his name is Jay, right? He came from Robinhood, if I'm remembering this correctly, right? Back when Sei was originally starting off, right? They wanted to essentially do Robinhood on chain. Right, and they ran into some problems, right, versus with the infrastructure not being there to actually support that type of an application. And this is essentially how the blockchain came to be. Now, the reason why they were trying to do Robinhood on chain was because around this time period, there was the GameStop fiasco, right, where GameStop essentially stopped trading on Robinhood, right? They had stopped trading on Robinhood. There's some traders that were essentially buying this stock, right? They're trying to do a short squeeze, and this is what led to trying to do Robinhood on chain. And then obviously the infrastructure wasn't ready, and then it shifted into building the general purpose infra that could support these type of dApps, right? So from that perspective, I think Carbon is essentially embodying this ideal where we want to have a fully on-chain trading system, right, where anyone can permissionlessly list whatever tokens they want up for sale or for buying, right? And it doesn't. There's no one that can stop you from doing this, right? You can just go ahead, list it, and as long as someone is on the other side that's willing to take your orders, that order is going to be taken, right? So I think this perspective of having these permissionless systems that anyone can interact with, from a trading perspective, also from the blockchain perspective, I think both of these things, we essentially have the same viewpoint.
Mark, you threw up 100 in there, I think, when Glenn was talking about ideals. Did you want to add to that? And by the way, like I'm calling on you guys, but we're super casual here. It's not a formal call. So Mark, I know Glenn and Grover, if you just want to jump in at any point in time, just unmute and have at it.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to add to what Glenn was saying there is that I do think that we are aligned with that vision that that Sei was founded with. And I want to underscore the point that Glenn was making about like permissionlessness, and it's permissionless in like a very profound way. And I know that a lot of DeFi protocols claim to be permissionless, but then there's kind of I want to say like hidden catches and things, but like it's permissionless so long as you can afford to like deploy an entire pool, for example, or something like that. Whereas in Carbon DeFi, there are no liquidity pools. You just quote the prices that you want to trade at, and you are free to choose whatever numeraire you want, right? Like when I'm using centralized exchanges and trading cryptocurrency, I generally only place limit orders. I never trade market. And when I'm doing that, usually I need to like go between things like US dollars or Australian dollars in order to get into like the next asset. And in reality, what I want to do is to set limit orders between any two tokens that I want, right? I want to trade Aave into Compound, for example, or Pepe into SPX, or whatever the things happen to be. And I can't do that in a centralized exchange. And so like the fact of the matter is, now that we have this application deployed and built on top of Sei, which is meant to service the type of throughput that you get on things like Robinhood, just like it's even more general than that, right? It's almost like we've overachieved, because it's not you don't have the same restrictions that you get on like Binance or Coinbase. It's completely restrictionless, and that's like it is profound. Like the combination of the flexibility that you get with the product that we put there, and the throughput and low latency of the Sei blockchain itself is just like it is a phenomenal accomplishment, and I am legitimately excited about it.
Grover, I have to say, we're talking about the finality, like the faster finality. Glenn and I were doing a walkthrough, a demonstration for the Sei community on Carbon DeFi. He was actually like creating live strategies, trading strategies. And Glenn, you can vouch for this. It was within a couple of seconds of creating that strategy that a notification popped up and it had already been traded against. Like it was so fast that it was almost like you had just finished creating the strategy, no?
It was relatively quick, inexpensive, which is also like good to know, like pennies on the dollar to actually interact with the blockchain, which is great for a lot of different applications, right? Also for users in general, right, that might need to transact in the blockchain, right? They can do so easily in a cheap manner, right? So this is another good thing about the Sei blockchain. Not only is it a high throughput chain, low latency, but obviously I think the fees are very, very, attractive for like the vast majority of users out there.
Practically zero. I've completed slipless trades on Carbon DeFi on Sei that were cheaper than if I had tried to process them on Binance and faster.
Yeah. Love to see it. No, exactly that. And I can see exactly where this. I've just been playing around with Carbon actually while you're talking, just having a look at some of the strategy types and stuff like that, and having like a little live brainstorm. I'm interested in like, this overlapping liquidity stuff here. I think I can see where it came from, like the point you raised about impermanent loss as well, like at the very start, and that not really making sense for people. So it doesn't really, you don't really want to provide liquidity on an AMM. So therefore, it's like, okay, how do we sort of like claw this a little closer to an order book? But this overlapping liquidity strategy, I was just thinking here with Pumped Up Fun, they kind of solved a problem for meme coins, which was it's really, really hard to bootstrap a pool. It's really difficult to get liquidity in the first place. And so what you do is this bonding curve. Okay, cool. Everybody gets to sort of jump into this bonding curve, and they use that liquidity to set up the initial pool. Sweet. But you're still stuck with an AMM. And of course, bots are just going to snipe now. Like those, like human beings can't really play ball in that world. So Yeah, I'm I'm gonna have a think about this as well. There's probably some utility here where instead you take the pump.fun concept and then you set up an overlapping liquidity strategy. You see where I'm going with this? Like this might make a little bit more
Yeah,
sense.
it's already happening. Yeah, like since we deployed, just all of a sudden, like 2/3 of the calls that I have every week are with token projects on Sei that are like learning about Carbon DeFi, and yeah, like I think our solution is even slightly better. So you can do it with an overlapping liquidity position for sure, right? And bootstrap the pool exactly the same way that Pump.fun does. But you've also got other bells and whistles there. So, for example, there was a token project that will be making some announcements in the coming weeks. That's already started to play around with Carbon. If you go on the Explorer, I think there's a small bug with the PRC right now, but we're figuring that out. It'll be done shortly. But there are tokens in Carbon right now that we're just waiting to get the PR approved, or these developers waiting to get the PR approved. And when I was, assisting them and answering their questions, you could see that they had like a dozen different strategies already deployed to make markets with all of these different tokens. And it solves two major problems. One is the bootstrapping the liquidity in the first place, as you mentioned. But then the second one is like, how do you create the cross pairs? And how can you manage the liquidity for all of these different things without having to shut down the pool or remove liquidity and that sort of thing. So one of the things that like Carbon DeFi does like very differently is, like I said earlier, we don't have like liquidity pools. You can bootstrap liquidity, but there is no pool. Like there is nothing in the contract that you can point to and say that's a liquidity pool. It really is like it's that general. And what this means is that you can update price quotes really, really, really quickly. So rather than having to sort of burn an NFT, remove tokens from the contract, put tokens back into different buckets and so on and so forth, or pay the prohibitive gas fees for deploying a different pool for each cross pair. With Carbon, you just create this one like quote system that allows you to create like a very intricate, relatively sophisticated marketplace, especially if you're listing more than one token at once. So yeah, it's like you're absolutely right. Like I wasn't expecting, and I hope this doesn't sound naive, but I wasn't expecting, the product to resonate so much with token issuers. But it turns out and this is demonstrated by Pump.fun. It was a totally unaddressed niche, and I'm very happy that we found this kind of, parallel use case for the product, which was like originally meant to service a much more close to the hardware use case. But yeah, if it services the token issuer community and their users, then so be it. I'm more than happy to see that come to fruition. And like I said, wait a week or two, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
Amazing. Yeah, no, this is cool. I've seen people use order book type protocols before for like token launches as well. So they're just like, I guess you'd set up a range order here and sort of scale out like as the issuer of a token, or something like that. Like, so people sort of come in and they just get increasingly higher prices. So it's kind of similar to a bonding curve, I guess, but I don't know. No, this is cool.
We still use bonding curves. Like the bonding curves are still there, but the thing that makes our version of concentrated liquidity so special is that each bonding curve only has one token on it, right? So in the conventional, and I'm getting maybe too far into the weeds here, and Jen is going to get annoyed at me, I know. But yeah, in a conventional concentrated liquidity paradigm, the bonding curves X and Y axis represent two different token balances. Whereas in our case, only one of those axes represents a token balance, and the other one is like just an arbitrary dimension. And this is why we get such flexibility out of it, because you don't need two tokens to quote a price anymore.
Beautiful. Okay. Is this just straight better? Is this straight better than Pump.fun, folks?
I mean, I don't want to upset anyone that's like thrilled about Pump.fun, and I think that what Pump.fun has is like it's built specifically for that use case, and so it's its marketing materials, the community that it's rallied, the specific business that it's been developed around it. I think is difficult to challenge. However, I don't think there's any reason to wait for Pumped Fun to come to Sei, because if you wanted all of those features, you already have them.
Interesting. Okay. Yes, we should have another call after this Twitter space. But yeah, this is really cool. And all that stuff you were saying before as well about finality. I mean, we can dig into that a bit more as well. But yeah, we think that user experience trading on chain shouldn't be like wildly different to trading on a centralized exchange or like any other Web2 kind of application. So yeah, people don't have to sit on their hands and kind of hope or like cross their fingers like, oh man, I hope I don't get sandwiched here, you know. um, not to say sandwiching won't be a problem one day. I'm sure like we'll get to that bridge and cross it when we get there, but you know.
Well, actually, Carbon can't be sandwiched.
Oh, okay, all right. I think there needs to be a thread written with all of this in it, because this is information that I think people are crying for.
I've got a couple of blogs on my Medium already that talks about sandwich attacks. And it's, you know, like I did have a pretty thorough like Twitter thread about this like last year. I can maybe revamp some of that stuff. But yeah, because Carbon's curves only trade in one direction, the sandwich attacker no longer has the certainty that when they backrun their transaction that it's going to be profitable. So they can still attempt it, right? And front running will always be an issue just because people can accidentally front run each other. Like front running isn't necessarily a malicious behavior. What the malicious behavior is deliberately front running someone with a huge volume in order to force them to take a slightly worse or catastrophically worse price in some cases, only to backrun the whole thing and sort of reset the system. In Carbon, you can't do that. Because if you front run someone with a large volume, you're forced to hold on to that trade, right? And you might be able to try back running or something in the second block or something, but you can't do it atomically. And what this means is that essentially there is no motivation to do the kind of front running in the first place. So the people that trade on Carbon are trading because those are the tokens that they want to buy, not because they're trying to exploit another user. And people that attempt that exploit will only lose money.
Okay, yeah, we're getting into black belt territory here. This is really cool. But yeah, okay. I think do you actually, one more question for you guys? This is more like just a Google Meets now. Do you see Carbon as being sort of like middleware for other teams to build protocols on top, or like maybe special, like, you know, we were talking about a specialized kind of pump.funny type project on top, or is it sort of this is the UI you're going to send people to and say, hey, like this is where you should open up your strategies, or is it a bit of both?
It's certainly a bit of both. Like in terms of a business model, like Carbon is a white labeled solution. So we deploy it on Sei ourselves because of our conviction in the chain. But we do license this technology out and people take it all over the place. And on top of that, you know, we offer UI UX support, and we're continuing to develop our like white labeling solutions. So, you know, later this year, I'm expecting to have a couple of different UI choices for licensees to choose from. And this will probably service a plethora of different use cases, including things like what Pump.Fun is doing. But more than that, in terms of people that want to build on top of the product, this is something I've always wanted for Bancor. And we had it like back in 2017, 2018, when we were the only game in town. But then since then, you know, other industry leaders have taken off, like Uniswap, like Trader Joe, and so on. But since Carbon has been around, I have been contacted by some like very ambitious like developer projects who will probably, I'm not sure if they will like necessarily buy a license, but they are interested in developing like third-party tools on top of it, including like their own front end, which is good for us, because I'm looking to also further decentralize the project by having like multiple front ends for stuff. But also because of the order book-like structure, it's possible to build more sophisticated trading options on top of it. Things like trailing stop losses, things like breakout trading, you know, these kinds of, or, you know, like, you know, MACD reversion trades. And so, you know, these things require a slightly different infrastructure. Things like, you know, Oracle systems, maybe Keeper systems to execute that kind of stuff. But there are projects that specialize in exactly those tools. and have been frustrated by the fact that even though they want to build these kinds of features on top of DeFi, there hasn't been a decentralized exchange that's able to support it. And I think that, already we're seeing that, with the offering that Carbon DeFi has, these developers are now taking an interest because this is the use case that they always wanted, even though the infrastructure looks a little bit different than what they've seen before. So there's like a bit of an adjustment period. But the short version is that, anything that can be achieved on centralized systems that you're used to working, things like Bybit, things like things like Deribit and other derivative platforms that are built on top of an existing exchange infrastructure can be built on Carbon DeFi. So there is definitely a lot of interest there. But yeah, I'm doing my best to make the learning curve a little bit less steep. I recently did a 5-part lecture series with Token Engineering Academy so that people can get used to the mathematics of what we've done. And we'll have a developer book and things coming out in the next couple of months and things like that. So the short answer, I'm sorry to ramble on, is that yes, like I do want people to build on top of it, and I do see a lot more flexibility in the types of features that can be put on offer. But at the same time, I think that the product itself, standalone, if you don't want to use those kinds of features, is also super attractive. But yeah, I do want it to be sort of a saturating infrastructure.
Yeah, nice. I mean, I was looking at here, like, and as you were talking, like, some of the other use cases popped into my head that a lot of people have asked for before in DeFi. And they were like, hey, like, can we do, people set up these bots on like centralized exchanges, what do they call them? You know what I'm talking about. Set up a range and they sort of trade the volatility here. Maybe I think you can go on KuCoin and there's like a set and forget range limit order bot thing, and it sort of trades in between the parameters you set. And I think they advertise some APR or something, like some unbelievable APR against them. But yeah, people have been looking for that kind of I guess like granular, like trading bot strategy, set and forget type vault stuff for a long time. But yeah, it seems like this is a step in the right direction for sure. I'm going to read your docs, and I'm going to read some of your threads because yeah, this is cool. Thanks. You can return to the usual programming now. My interrogation is over.
No,
This is the usual programming.
Great.
Yeah, we say this is not formal. Like I said, we go in here and it's just organic and just real conversation. So I appreciate it. Glenn, do you want to add anything to that? I know Rick has been up here. He's been super patient. I want to give him a chance to speak or ask his questions, but I want to see if you want to add anything to what Mark and Grover were saying.
Yeah, just like a quick thought here. Carbon is quite flexible in what you can do with it, right? We tell people it's sort of like a very a prescriptive system, right? In the sense that you, as the maker or the trader, you tell the protocol what to do, and it will try to accomplish that for you, right? So from that sense, it's very flexible. We don't try to impose anything on you as a trader, right? In terms of fees or spreads that you can set on your strategies, right? Trading pairs that you can trade, right? As long as tokens have liquidity on chain, then anything is essentially like fair game, right? There's a few caveats with some of the tokens, things like rebasing tokens, for example, right? These are problematic not just for us, but for other DeFi protocols. But in general, it's quite flexible. If you have any like cool ideas around like building on Carbon, please reach out to us. We're more than happy to provide you with any like developer support that you might need from us in terms of like getting up and running, giving you access to our dev resources, which are openly available. But if you just want to like ask us questions about how to do XYZ, we're pretty much open to those questions, and obviously trying to help you out to accomplish your goals.
Amazing. Thank you, Glenn. And Mark, for anyone who is listening who might want to take you up on that, your DMs are open, right?
Yes.
Always.
Yeah. Cool. Rick, I want to pass it over to you because you've been so wonderful and patient. Thank you so much. It's first of all great to see you again, to speak with you. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so good to hear all these wonderful voices of people I know and get a chance to meet a lot of folks that I don't. I had kind of a statement and then a question for whoever might be able to answer it. I was never, although I was familiar with Carbon, of course, and Bancor, I really wasn't familiar with the Sei network until this announcement came out, and I'm just now really starting to get my feet wet, which I'm very curious in for a couple reasons. One is as this market starts to really, I think, take shape, see much more broader adoption and things that I think we're going to see in the coming months and years. I have a personal belief that it's going to be these more mature, cutting edge type of solutions and services that are really going to make some of these chains and projects stand out across the board. So the fact that Sei Network is the first to really embrace this Carbon launch really piqued my interest as I see Carbon as uh, a new cutting edge way of where DeFi is going to go, especially in regards to exchanges. So kudos to whoever kind of drove that. And I guess that leads to my second question, which is I'd love to hear if I could a consolidated kind of story on how did the introduction take place, and what was it that Sei saw with Carbon that really prompted this to take place.
I don't know if Mark or oh, go ahead, Glenn. I see you unmuted. You want to take this one?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of this happened back in early January, earlier this year. So essentially, I got introduced through to Sei from the folks at Zelic. Zelic is a smart contract auditor. I think they audited Sei V2 as well, right? So essentially, I had a few conversations with them, and one of the folks over on their side, they were like very interested in Carbon, right? Not only from the perspective of potentially having us as a client, but also just as a personal user of on-chain dexes, right? So he essentially told me about Sei, about this cool blockchain, what they're doing and what they're building, and made some intros for us to, I believe it's Owen from the Sei side, right? Owen, I think, does BD. He's on the DeFi side, right? We had a few discussions, introductions around the protocol. He was very excited. He was like, okay, this is quite cool. Once he understood the actual concept of Carbon, what its capabilities were, right? And how it could, fit perfectly into this blockchain, right? Just because it's this order book-like protocol that, would perform well under a highly performant blockchain that has like a lot of throughput, low latency. And I think from our side, we're also very excited about what the design space could be like in the future, right? Once Sei V2 was live, there's a whole slew of possibilities that are possible now, right? And I think this is where we got excited from, this essentially this perspective where, there's this new blockchain that's launching, right? They already had Sei V1, which is like Cosmo Wasm based, right? Now they're adding this EVM compatibility, and at the same time, they're optimizing the EVM, right, in order to make it highly performant, right? So all these things combined, I think, led to us being very attracted to a blockchain like, say, V2, and then obviously from the other side, having a protocol like Bancor, right, which embodies some of the like original ideals behind how Sei came to be, right? This idea of having like Robinhood on chain. So I think it was like a perfect match, and that's essentially my recollection here. But yeah, I don't know if you have other questions, Rick. Happy to answer them, but I think that covers some of the stuff that you're asking.
No, that's great. I really appreciate it. As like I said, there's so much competition, especially I think upcoming in the L1 space, and how chains are going to differentiate themselves other than I'm faster, more scalable, et cetera, is going to be pivotal in my opinion. And bringing on a project like Carbon, which is just such an evolutionary advancement over a traditional AMM, I think is a huge statement for Sei. And I'm excited to keep digging deeper and learning more.
For sure, I think what I've seen, it's it's a very nimble project, right? It moves quick, ships really fast. I've seen some of the governance updates. They go into a lot of details when it comes to, I would say, the underlying like architecture, if you're actually interested in what that looks like, there's a lot of literature on the Sei website, right? All discussions that go on around it is quite open. It's accessible for anyone to actually join in and chime in. So like I'm very excited around Sei, what it's actually delivering, and all the promises that it told us like a few months ago that it was gonna do. They're actually here, right? So this is what excites me about actually seeing a project ship and be out there.
Say less, do more. That's the it's the saying. But yeah, no, thanks so much for the kind words, man. That's very kind. I think shipping stuff. I mean, some people have argued that actually shipping was minus EV. Yeah, we should just not. But I think we prefer to push some code here and see if things play out how we think. But I think this is an example actually of it's like, okay, give an example of a project that probably doesn't work on ETH mainnet, but could on a faster and higher throughput EVM compatible blockchain. And this is something where I guess Carbon, if you're sitting there and setting limit orders and strategies and people are trying to execute them when the finality is 10 12 minutes, it's something that is probably not too intuitive or useful. So like I'm looking at this and I'm seeing it as an example. Like if this infrastructure gets used, if Carbon gets used to its potential, it's for sure like something that's just not possible on lower throughput blockchains, and I guess Sei kind of unlocks here. So excited to see, especially when Mark was talking about some of these things coming out in the next week or two, kind of how that plays out as well, because that's a really interesting iteration on like the current meta on what's going on Solana. So interested to see how that plays out.
It's Glenn, you had mentioned the slew of possibilities we're kind of talking about. Grover, you're saying like say less, do more, right? Or like ship more. I do have a question. Speaking to those possibilities, what potential functionalities for Carbon open up due to Sei's speed versus operating on Ethereum? We kind of answered that, but I want to ask, just because it was submitted to me, are there any other sort of use cases or functionalities that we hadn't spoken about yet? Mark or Glenn, I don't know. I know that you guys may be a little bit hesitant to throw something out there that hasn't been introduced yet.
I mean, there's always things in the backlog, like the original research spec for Carbon was impossible to build all at once. And you've always got this compromise, I think, between everything that you want to achieve and what can be achieved on like a reasonable time frame and shipped in within a deadline. And so, I'm still very proud of like, what Carbon is and offers already. But there are, many other features that have already been researched and even partially implemented that are waiting, to be added on. So no, it's absolutely not the end. This isn't like, we're not done, not by a long shot. I'm hoping that one day, we'll get to the end of my list of things that Carbon is supposed to do. But I've learned my lesson about revealing what things are and playing the game of when upgrade. So just know that it's not like our creative energy is spent. Far from it. There's still a huge amount of stuff that I want to do with Carbon, and once we're through sort of this phase of the product. The product adoption, there will be, there will be a lot of extra stuff coming. So this is just phase one.
Awesome. Rick, I didn't mean to cut you off earlier also. Did you have any other questions or any other comments for the speakers?
No, you didn't cut me off at all. I had everything I had to say and got what I was looking for. So I'm excited to continue to watch where Carbon goes and also to continue to learn more about Sei.
Awesome. Thanks, Rick. If anybody else has any questions, by the way, any of our listeners, please don't hesitate to request. We can bring you up here up on stage with us. Well, I know that meme tokens have recently kind of taken off on Sei a little bit, right? I'm seeing more and more of them. Mark, are these new projects? Can you speak to them a little bit? Are they meme tokens or should we wait for the official announcements?
Look, let's wait for official announcements. So, like, it's impossible, I think, for me to even categorize them. Like, there are utility tokens, there are GameFi tokens, there are meme tokens. There's a bunch of stuff, plus all of the things that that people are used to. So I think it would be okay for me to say that I was on a call with Stargate recently, who is going to be bringing over things like wrapped ETH and native USDC and all the kinds of things that DeFi thrives on. So that's I think a good. That's good. That's going to bring some lifeblood, I think, to the exchange infrastructure. But yeah, it's really the stuff that people do with blockchains that are beside or adjacent the normal exchange or the normal sort of just trading paradigms that I think are more interesting. Tokenized all kinds of stuff. And yes, there's been such a rich and varied group of people that have been talking to me about what they, how they can bring their token to Carbon and what they need it to do and that kind of thing. So no, I think I prefer not to talk about things until it's time to talk about them, and I think it's still too early. But for the more seasoned Saians out there, Sei Trace is there, and some of these tokens are already on the Carbon contract. So if you're interested in taking a sneak peek, you can go and have a look at the blockchain history already.
Awesome. Thank you. Crypto Hunter, I want to welcome you to the call. Thanks for joining us up here.
Thank you, Jen. It's my pleasure to be on. Grover, I think this is the first, could I say the first time we've ever crossed on a call? Yeah, but it's really cool.
Maybe, sir. I recognize your PFP though. That's a bold looking Saiyan, and everybody knows
Definitely.
The bold Saiyans are the best ones.
Absolutely, you're right, man. Let's go. Yeah, it's cool to have you on, Grover. I also see everyone here, Mark and the rest, Glenn. We've crossed paths before in several cases. Really nice. I always say, Jen, every opportunity I have to talk about Carbon DeFi, I actually don't waste it, because personally, I am very pleased with, as a trader, I'm very much pleased with what Carbon DeFi is bringing down to Sei. I pretty much love the auto trading features, and lots of persons I'm connected to, they are also very much looking forward to what Carbon DeFi is bringing. I mean, Jen, remember sometimes across one of our spaces, you could see the enthusiasm that members of the community on Sei had with regards to all that Carbon DeFi has to offer. So personally, I'm very pleased. I'm happy that we have this, and listening to the conversations between Grover with all the days that's coming up with regards to what Carbon DeFi has to offer. I'm really looking forward to a lot from you guys. Just like a couple of questions anyway, maybe one of it's just been taken off my mouth, but I would have loved to know, maybe Mark or Glenn, because I'm trying out some stuff on Carbon personally. So talking about trading tokens right now, how many tokens do we have, or how many opportunities on the Sei Echo do we have that we could trade on Carbon DeFi? Is it just Sei, or how many of them?
Yeah, good question. So I think the chain is still sort of in its revving up its engine phase. There is still a lot of people that a lot of other projects that haven't yet deployed their contracts and so on and so forth. But it's still a relatively robust offering already. So you'll find Sei to stable pairs already. Like I said, we're going to get wrapped ETH will be available on Sei in the coming days. Again, it depends on a relatively smooth deployment, but Stargate is right at the top of their game, and so I don't think that anyone will have to be waiting too long for that. But yeah, and then there's also a couple of meme tokens that are getting set up there. and looking to, like I said, with already in conversation with a bunch of other projects that are looking to get started setting up their marketplace there. But there's no reason to wait. If there's something that you want to trade, you can literally make a market for it right now, and you don't necessarily need to. There's a bunch of different ways that Carbon can be used. So, for example, let's say that there's a token that you're interested in. And remember that the EVM also supports the CW tokens. So, for example, if you wanted to trade the Saiyan token, even if there's no liquidity for it, it doesn't matter, right? That, like I said, there are no liquidity pools on Carbon. And so, if you wanted to trade Saiyan right now at the current market price, or whatever you think the current market price is, you can just go and create a quote and say, look, here's some Sei, and I expect this number of Saiyan tokens, and publish that order to the chain. And as soon as there's a market appetite for it, it will be taken. There is infrastructure running there that will make sure that it's taken. So you can actually trade anything. Any tokens that are currently on the Sei blockchain are tradable on Carbon DeFi right now. You don't need to wait for people to create liquidity pools in order to trade it.
This is awesome, man. I'm really wild on what I'm listening to. So guys, I'm very sure everyone here listening in, it's really crazy. This is awesome that you could just create. I really love the fact that you don't have to wait for liquidity to come in before pools are created. Then you could trade, across anything on board. Thank you very much, Mark, for bringing up that. I'm really looking forward to having more interactions on Carbon DeFi. Thanks a lot, Jen. Pretty much nice that you brought me on.
Thanks so much, Crypto Hunter. It's always nice to speak with you. Thanks for joining and asking your questions. We are at the top of the hour, so I want to hand it over to you guys once more. If you have any final thoughts, I know we had mentioned different use cases. Grover, we had spoken about developers building on top of Carbon DeFi. I don't know if you want to speak to, projects coming over to Sei V2, but I'd like to give you the microphone. Any final thoughts? Anybody out there that you want to give a message to, please do.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess, yeah, we're still just to give some context, just one last piece of context, which I think is useful. We're still calling this phase 2 out of 3 on Sei. So, V2 is live. Infrastructure is coming on. We're getting bridges set up. Stargate is one of those key kind of infra pieces that we're looking for Ethereum liquidity to come in. So, yeah, we're still kind of, I'd phrase it and give the context. We're in phase 2 out of 3. So pretty soon, I think we're going to be approaching that coveted phase 3 moment when a little bit more liquidity turns up here, and yeah, it should be game time, and we'll let everybody know when that's the case. And I'm really interested because, on a personal level, I really like to look and see what kind of innovations and what kind of iterations on the previous sort of the meta. What's the existing DeFi game, how is it played, and what are people kind of limited by, and what are their problems. And I think things like Carbon are really interesting because they change some of those rules, and then they start to unlock a bunch of stuff that you never even imagined happening in the first place. So yeah, I'm genuinely curious and interested to see how people use this in the coming weeks and months. So yeah, and that's it from me, I think. See you guys in the next Twitter space. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much, Grover, for all of that. Thanks for joining, and thanks for all of the support and enthusiasm you've shown for Carbon DeFi. Glenn and Mark, do either of you have any final thoughts or any final messages you want to give to any of our listeners?
Just that there's no reason to wait. If you've been waiting for DeFi on Sei, you have it. At the moment, if you're looking to take other people's orders, you still can. If you want to trade against it the same way that you're used to taking the market, there are active pairs that are relatively liquid. Things like I said, Sei into various stable coins and so on. But you don't need to wait to trade at the price that you want to trade at. And so if you're looking to buy tokens and you think that you've got a fair price in mind, just make a quote, right? Sei is so cheap to use that it's basically free. So yeah, there's nothing to wait for, right? The more people that get involved, the more tokens that appear in the system, the more it will thrive and grow. So there's nothing to wait for.
Grover,
Yeah.
I have one more question, and I'll let everybody enter space. Can you is it just ERC20s, or would ERC71s work with Carbon? Like, for example, I guess this is a little bit different. It would only work in a few specific examples.
Right. Yeah. So we can use, I think, ERC20s and CW20s, which is the COSM-WASM variation of an ERC20. There are and even then it has some restrictions. So tax tokens, as Glenn has pointed out previously, are generally incompatible with DeFi. So are rebasing tokens. So as long as it doesn't, as long as it's a standard ERC20 or CW20, then everything's going to be fine. Carbon can potentially be used for ERC like 721, 720, 1155, and so on, which are for those who are listening, these are like the NFT standards. And so it has occurred to me, and this is something that we did a design process, early on, that you can actually use Carbon to set up something like OpenSea and have an NFT marketplace for it as well. And it's still a use case that we're investigating. So that will require a contract upgrade, which is fine. We're happy to do that. But I need to be confident that that will actually, happen. And so if anyone on the call is either running a NFT project or knows someone who's running an NFT project, just know that this is a business case that I'm investigating. And I'm very interested to hear from, from people that will use it for that use case in order to make it compelling enough for us to do that kind of upgrade. So yeah, short answer is for now it's ERC20 and CW20.
Sorry to cut you. Sorry, I'm not cutting you, Mark. There is Nova Solution. I hope Nova Solution, you're listening to this. I'm not cutting you in. That's a great NFT main. I could see some of them down there. So that's a great one. You could actually see my reaction where you mentioned this. This is awesome and this is really great. This should be something that you get across to all the NFT guys here on Sei, that they could really speak to the Carbon team and get to find out more about this, right? Sorry, Mark.
No, that's totally fine. Yeah, if there's enough demand for it, we'll do it. Like I said, I try not to do anything if there isn't a clear, a clear reason to do it. And we've been on Ethereum for so long, and the NFT space there is very much saturated by things like OpenSea. So we've decided not to do that because it's unclear if we did whether or not it would be sufficient to to make a dent in what is already a very entrenched marketplace there. But yeah, if Sei wants it, and there are a bunch of NFT projects that need this kind of infrastructure, please reach out to me. If there are enough of you, I will make it happen.
That's great. Great.
Nice one. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Glenn, do you have some final thoughts and any messages, whether it's, traders or liquidity providers or projects or developers?
Yeah, I think most of it was covered, but I'll just say that we're more than happy to talk to any project that has a token out there, right? Whether you're trying to figure out how do I get that on a DEX, right? Or you have a stable coin or any asset that needs to be pegged to another token, right? You have a synthetic coin, an LST, an LRT, right? You're looking to figure out how to get these tokens on chain on a DEX so that anyone can easily buy and sell these things. We're more than happy to talk to you, right? Meme tokens, whatever that is, right, that you're trying to get on chain, definitely reach out to us, right? If you're a project, even if you're another DEX, right, we're more than happy to talk to you as well. I don't think it was mentioned in this call, but we do have something called the ARP Fastlane, which is an open arbitrage network, and essentially we integrate a lot of other on-chain liquidity sources. So if you have another DEX on-chain, we're more than happy to have you be integrated into the Bancor ARP Fastlane. So yeah, reach out to us. Certainly happy to talk with you and seeing how we can work together.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Glenn. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Grover. Crypto Hunter, thank you. And Rick, I don't know if you're here still, but to all of the listeners and the speakers, definitely appreciate you guys being up here. I'm looking forward to, seeing everything really build out and say V2. Glenn, you unmuted. Did you want to add something else?
No, I'm good. I was unmuted from before. Thank you.
Want to make sure that I didn't cut you off if you did. But really seeing the entire ecosystem grow and the community grow. I've already said it. The community is amazing. I have my DMs open as well. So if anybody has any questions, please reach out to me. Otherwise, visit say.carbondefi.xyz to check out Carbon DeFi on Say. Thank you guys all so much for being here. Grover, it's been an absolute pleasure.